And there is no shortcut to wiring all the neurons together. You have to do extreme repetition of that behaviour, because we've been telling people the same advice, pretty much giving them advice, and then expecting everyone to go and miraculously be able to form those habits on their own. At a macro level, we all look the same sort of shape, but at a microscopic level, we are all different at cellular level. And the same in the brain. The effort that I had to put in to try and tackle those 48 habits in my own routine was immense. I mean, it's hard. And I think there are a lot of people in denial who are sugar addicts who don't really realise.
Welcome to the Visionary podcast, where we discuss science, medicine, physical health, and mental well-being. Dr. Julia Jones, you spent over 30 years studying, researching neuroscience and psychology. You have this fascinating blend. You're a neuroscientist, biohacker, an entrepreneur, a DJ, and you play the guitar in a band and all. But behind this public persona, there is a life experience that drives you to champion preventative care. Would you like to share that with us, please, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I was in the health and fitness world throughout the 90s and was firmly convinced that was going to produce healthy nations. And then my dad died of a heart attack in a hotel celebrating his 65th birthday with my mum after years of obesity-related illnesses, and an inability to change his exercise habits, his eating habits, combined with the fact that back then we were giving the wrong information to avoid fat and everything else, but that's a whole other conversation. And then more recently, my mum last year, very late diagnosis of cancer, bowel cancer, then died 12 weeks later, a couple of months ago. So, there is clearly a flaw in the model, because we've been telling people the same advice, pretty much giving them advice, and then expecting everyone to go and miraculously be able to form those habits on their own, which clearly doesn't work for most people. And so that's been the driver of my work over the last many years, and continues to be so, because I believe it's the biggest challenge we've got. If we don't fix the problem through preventative success, then we're doomed, as far as I'm concerned, because the problem is, mostly our behaviour.
Yes. Are there certain decisions that you make now and you consciously think, doing this for my father?
Not really. I mean, it's a part of the story. That highlighted to me that it didn't work. Back then, I'd built a very successful health club chain in the 90s, and we were making a ton of money because it's a brilliant business model. People join, they start coming to the gym, then they fizzle out, but they don't cancel their direct debit, and they continue to pay.
But they don't show up.
They don't show. So it's a great business model, I mean, even when they do cancel, there's always a steady stream of people coming through the door to join, of new members. So as a business model, it is a very solid model. But for a behaviour change solution, it clearly is not working. There is a missing piece in that protocol that isn't there, because otherwise, we've been giving these recommendations since the 80s, since I entered the sector in the late 80s. Surely we would have produced healthy nations now if that model worked. There is something missing in the model, and that's the journey that I've been on, is that I knew that there was a flaw in that protocol, and so I went on a mission over 6 years to try and figure out why it doesn't work and what we should be doing instead. And so that's.
What is a missing piece that you found?
Well, after going down an incredibly large number of dead-end rabbit holes, eventually, after having looked at a ton of different things, from apps to supplements to wearables to gut health, that they were all coming back to one limiting factor, which is the fact that, if you take supplements as an example, if you start taking supplements but don't form a habit around that, then the supplement only works while you're taking it. So you have to form a lasting habit of taking that, or if it's exercise, you have to form a lasting habit. And most people cannot get to the point where the brain has wired that behaviour as a behaviour that will become the automated process moving forward. And so when that became, it was popping up, no matter what I was looking at, this fact kept popping up that most people will start doing all these things, start using the wearable to measure their biology, start using the app, whatever it was. But they couldn't keep going long enough unless they had human support. So that became the kind of the screamingly loud outcome of my research journey, is that actually we need to figure out, how do we scale up human support? So then I went on a different track to try and identify the minimum effective dose of human support. And then once I'd found the minimum effective dose of human support, I had to figure out how to then enable health and wellness providers to deliver that minimum amount at scale.
That's brilliant. We'll talk about Holidity, but I want to go back a little bit when you were 19.
Ooh,
when you
back
read,
in the day.
I know, the lovely days. When you read about dopamine and the brain's reward system, how did understanding the brain's chemistry help you coach people right now with the product that you have? We'll talk about Holidity. How did that benefit you now?
Well, it was a complete accident through... I was a tennis coach, and I was in a band, and so I took my, I used to have the ghetto blaster with the tape decks and the two speakers at the end, and I would take that, put the batteries in it, take it onto the tennis court, and I would be listening to the songs that I was learning for the band that I was in, because I was in a
At
rock
19.
band. Yeah, and so this. I started realizing that the kids that I was coaching were coming back more. I was becoming a very successful tennis coach, partly because I was using the music then within my sessions. So getting the kids to time their shots in time with the beat of the music that we were listening to. And so I was incorporating music into the training. Then I read a book called The Inner Game of Tennis, which then opened me up to the fact that, there's something going on in here. There's all this stuff going on in the mind and the psychology of it, and that absolutely fascinated me. And then I ended up going and doing a sport and exercise science degree, and then diving into that, in a lot more detail.
At that age, you instinctively realized at the age of 19 that timing, hitting the ball with the rhythm or the beat was a good thing, was a positive thing. What did that?
But I didn't know why.
Didn't know why.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the you could see that using the beat of the music as the metronome to try and get people to lock into the rhythm of hitting a stroke and just getting into that training that motor behavior action by locking into music as a metronome, But I didn't know. So I could see that it was working. And also because it was more enjoyable when the kids liked having music in the tennis. I was getting more work than anyone else because I was using music, not because I was a better coach necessarily, but because my sessions were producing results, because the music was helping lock in the kind of training principles, but also because they enjoyed it.
Hi, I'm Hala, your host today. If you're enjoying what you see, please hit that lovely subscribe button. It will mean a lot to us. Or maybe a small podcast now, but with your support, we can build this channel together, one step at a time. Thank you so much for being part of it. Now, with all the knowledge that you have, looking back, how exactly did music help those children achieve maybe better performance, better stamina? We have a lovely brain here. How did the music function in their brains? What was happening there?
Well, it's the magic of music within the brain, because there are so many parts of the brain that are activated when you're listening to music, when you're making music. when you're playing music, when you're singing, there are, the even visually, the temporal lobes are activated, the motor cortex is activated, especially in the example we're talking about on the tennis court. But the main trigger really, it is the enjoyment response. So you've got a serotonin and dopamine response going on because people are enjoying it, especially in that group setting. It's fun, and and especially if it's music that they knew, because it was songs that were in the charts right then, so they were familiar with the songs. If we look at the way the brain wires behaviour, because looking at it as a tennis coach perspective, you're trying to wire together millions of neurons in the brain so that forehand shot is perfected, right? And so you have to hit it over and over and over again, because that process in the brain called long-term potentiation is how we wire habits, how groups of neurons that are repeatedly activated are wired together through that process. So if you're trying to get someone to form a habit of a perfect technique, then you have to do it over and over and over again, and using music as a metronome for that.
Would that maybe distract them from fatigue or something?
Yeah, so feelings of fatigue and just it's the enjoyment factor, because if people are enjoying something and they're focused in on it, they will do it for longer. And there is no shortcut to wiring all the neurons together. You have to do extreme repetition of that behavior, but there is no other way that it works. And this has ended up being, that long-term potentiation process then became, I've never really thought of this until this immediate moment, but the long-term potentiation was the limiting factor in the research project that I've been doing right now. And that is the full focus now of my work, is explaining to people how that long-term potentiation process works. But that was exactly the same process that we were activating when I was 19 doing the tennis coaching, because it's about wiring neurons together into a behaviour that exists as a lasting habit.
It's a full circle.
Yeah, and I think I hadn't really thought about it until this second. And I think when you look at, there are so many things linked to this, but coming to present day, to when we 40, 50 years of diet, fitness and wellness trends and recommendations haven't had any impact on a rising, spiralling health crisis, because we don't teach people how the brain wires behaviour. So if I ask a coach, or if I ask a personal trainer or anything else, how does the brain wire behaviour? Blank, because it's not in the curriculum. We're not taught that, and so the personal trainers and the coaches and all the help, even the doctors, they're not teaching people how the brain forms habits. And if you explain the basic biology of it, then it makes complete sense to people why you have to aggressively go after that habit, trying to do it every single day for months. Otherwise you will fail. Because the way that I describe this long-term potentiation process to people is like a rose. If I wanted to buy a rose, I could go on my phone now, buy it.
Yes.
Then it would be delivered tomorrow, thanks to the miracle of modern delivery. But then when I plant it in the soil in my garden, the roots are not going to suddenly explode out of the bottom of it at the press of a button. I'm going to have to look after that rose. I'm going to have to water the rose. I'm going to have to feed the rose. I'm going to have to probably put a stick in the ground and maybe tie it up so it's got a bit of support in the windy weather. While that the root network, a biological process of all those roots growing out into the ground, that takes time. And exactly the same with the long-term potentiation process is that, if this is a brain, if my hand is a brain cell and this is the cell body, these projections are the dendrites. When you're repeating a behaviour, that brain cell is moving molecules from the cell body and placing them on the
That's in
outer
my brain?
membrane of the dendrites. So the more you repeat the behavior, the more of these you're putting onto the outer membrane onto the membrane of the dendrites. They act as receptors, so that brain cell can then capture the neurochemicals that are transmitted from the brain cells nearby. And this is how networks, millions of brain cells have to be wired up like that to create a lasting behavior that becomes your normal habit. Well, if you don't keep doing the behavior long enough, a reversal process, if it hasn't reached a point of stabilization and you stop too soon, a reversal process happens where the cell transports those molecules back into the cell body. It recycles them back in. So
yeah, well, most of us, we do the action or try to form a habit, unrealizing that there's actually things happening in my brain
Exactly.
while I'm doing the action, and even things happening in the brain while I'm letting go of the action.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
this is a brilliant idea, but we talk about, okay, if we want to form new habits or for change to be sustainable, you keep talking about long enough. How long?
Well, that is
they say you need 21 days to form a new habit.
Yeah.
What's your position?
It's not as simple as that, because if you think of all of the habits that we have and all of the habits that we have to form. So I did a forensic examination of my daily routine as part of my research. I found 48 habits within my daily routine that would positively or negatively impact health. So little things, big things like the things I was eating, but also little.
Give us examples, please.
But also little, the time of day that I was eating it, but also little things like what time was I going outside to get access to daylight? When I was walking to meetings every day on the London Underground, automatically getting on the escalator on the right hand side and standing on it instead of entering that escalator on the left hand side and walking up it. That automated habits throughout the day. So if you think about that range of 48 things that I found within my own daily routine at a granular level, those habits are so different. Some of them were very difficult to tackle, and some of them were very easy.
And the difficult ones would typically take longer to form.
Take more effort. Okay. Or you have to buy things, or you have to go somewhere to do it, So when people say, well, how long will it take? Well, what is the habit that you're trying to form?
Let's say the big ones: cutting sugar, exercising every day.
Yeah. So then wrap around that. Who do you live with? What's their behaviour? Are they eating differently? Are they not exercising? Do they all want to get on board with you? So you've got lots of people within the house want to do the same thing, so that'll make it easiasier.
Let's assume worst case scenario, they are resistant. I have a 9-year-old and she's eating. I don't allow her to eat rubbish a lot, but
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking months. High frequency repetition, so preferably something every day, 4 months.
4 months.
To really solidly lock that in. And
4 months, 3 is different than 9. Give me hope.
Yeah, well, it depends, because some people won't be able to do it every day for months. So that there isn't here's the body of research that says exactly how long it takes to, because it depends on the habit that you're replacing and the strength of that habit. It depends on your personal genetics. So
yes,
just
biology plays a role. Right?
Yeah, I've been on the planet for 55 years, and I've never, in that time I've met millions of people, but I have never yet met someone who looks exactly like me, because at a macro level we all look the same sort of shape, but at a microscopic level we are all different at cellular level. And the same in the brain. The way that your brain has developed depends on your experiences during childhood. It depends what you've been exposed to. It depends on how structured your reward circuits are in your brain. If you've got very, very high functioning reward circuits in the brain, you'll have very high levels of intrinsic motivation. So you might be much more driven and able to do it on your own, whereas someone else
we'll have
a different brain.
We'll assume that we can't do things on our own. Otherwise, it would have been very easy. Driven, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But you talk about environment, people that you live with. You talk about your biology. Does that mean that willpower or motivation is overrated? Should I rely on any of them?
I don't believe that. When a lot of people put their habit failure, down to I must have be lacking in willpower. Why can't I do it?
Yeah.
And it's just not true. We don't. A lot of these habits, we're having to override evolutionary biology to form them in the first place, because
Explain that to me, please.
not so. So our brain lives in a dark, silent box called the skull. It has no idea what's going on in the outside world except for the information that's being fed through our senses. The brain, the job is the survival, is basically survive.
Yes.
So take in all of that information from the outside world and determine how to then activate behaviour so that we stay alive. And so throughout our evolutionary history, we've been looking for food. We're on the hunt for food. Where is food? Food is scarce.
Yeah,
so if you see food,
mm-hmm.
eat it. In your line of work, asking us now in our modern environment with this ancient brain biology and brain circuits to not eat all the incredible food that's all around us is hard, because we are wired to eat. And also from an exercise point of view, exercise burns calories. Calories used to be scarce. So we are very much wired to sit down and conserve calories because they might be required for running away from a predator.
Yeah. But why do you call our brain ancient? Didn't it catch up to our modern lifestyle?
Sadly, not in. I mean, it's this process is so slow. It's not going to have any impact in our lifetime or the next generation's lifetime or the next generation's lifetime. Because for the reason that the amount of change that we've witnessed, even during my lifetime, of the arrival of fast foods and the arrival of digital products and sitting in front of screens, and the change of the workplace and the hybrid working and just everything, that the way we travel, that has happened. A lot of that's happened within my lifetime. So a brain that is evolved, we share a lot of these circuits with many other creatures. It's not just in a human brain. So we're talking about millions of years of evolution before human evolution, hundreds of thousands of years of our evolution. Expecting that kind of biology to adjust within decades.
Yeah, so you're telling us that our brain evolved in a very different environment than the environment that we live right now.
Very.
So there is a mismatch between my ancient brain and how do we bridge this gap?
Just locking in those behaviours. We have to lock in behaviours that are often contra to the behaviours that were historic. So historically, I'd be sitting in the field, gazing out at the panoramic landscape, knowing that no predators were coming my way, and searching for the berries, and then sitting in the vast terrain, eating my berries, and then looking for some water. It's just not like that now, and this is a significant problem. And the effort that I had to put in to try and tackle those 48 habits that I identified
in yourself,
in my own routine, was immense. I mean, it's hard. And even now, I'll go into a restaurant now and I automatically just look for salad or fish. I don't even read the rest of the menu because I'm just used. That's just what I do. It's like, where's the salad?
So it's automated for you.
Yeah,
already wired in your brain.
But after that took a long time of long effort,
trying to ignore the pies
and when everyone else is choosing the pie, and I really want the pie, but I've got the fish. But then the fish arrives, and it's like, oh my god! And then everyone's jealous because the fish and the vegetable is so incredible, right? But forming those habits, it's hard, and so I from what I've seen with my research, and not just even this last 5 or 6 years of research, but the whole decades of what I've seen professionally and personally, most people will not be able to do that on their own. It's you have to have immense amounts of intrinsic motivation and drive to be that disciplined. Mm-hmm. And I see that in, I worked in elite sport, and when you look at, we've just had the Winter Olympics recently, and I work with Olympic squads, and the amount of dedication that those athletes have got, they have very, very high levels of intrinsic motivation. That is
Coming
not
from
normal.
Where?
That's not sometimes genetic. It could be from a family that were in that environment, but also just wired that way. Some of it is
through years of
practice.
Just, through years of practice, maybe.
Yeah, well, the discipline level, I think that comes very deep from within the person, that they are that type of personality, which is partially DNA, right? It's your genetics, but also combined with experiences that you have growing up. And that might range from that you were introduced to a sport at an early age and it just really grabbed you, or you might have seen it on TV and then had that role model of that person that you wanted to be, or you were in an environment that you wanted to get out of, and you saw sport as the escape.
Yeah, but you're telling us that there is the knowledge to change. We know what to do, right? We know the right thing, but there is, this is what's fascinating for me, there is the biological inability to do that sometimes. It's like, in a way, working against the brain, but we can't go back to the caves. But is there a way to optimize my brain to keep up with what we're doing now? Or if it's the other way around, I should tune my ancient brain to become prehistoric? Is that, how do I do that?
Well, so there are a couple of options on the table when we're trying to figure out how to live in this world. You can either step away from it and really try and live as close to how we're meant to be living as possible, which would require, for many people, relocating to a different location, changing to a completely different job, different, it's a lot.
Cutting off mobile phones.
Yeah, or align yourself with people who are trying to adopt the habits that you're trying to adopt, so that eat in the same way, that have the same mindset. It's much easier to do this with other people than try and do it on your own. So, and that might just be with joining a Facebook group or something, just so that you've got a community of people that are trying to live the way that you're trying to live. And simplicity and your environment. So I know I learned during my experiment, on my N of 1 experiment of myself, I cancelled my gym membership on January the 1st, 2020. And then I wanted to see if I could just change my habits and let my daily routine of habits keep me well without having to go to a location to do exercise or anything like that. I just wanted to see if it was possible through habits. And during that experiment, I had to acknowledge that I cannot have biscuits in the house.
Yeah.
I cannot have crisps in the house. I cannot have anything like that in the house, because I am, we were brought up with a lot of sugar, a lot of not junk food, but there was sweets on the front of every comic that I would buy. It was normal, and I have a very, very deep craving for that kind of sweet chocolate ice cream food. I cannot have it in the house and think, oh, I'll just have one biscuit on a Friday morning.
Works for me, never.
I cannot have it. And so the other way to approach it is to really do an audit of your environment. So what have you got in the house? What have you got? I did little things like putting the printer upstairs, so that during
so you have to go
during
upstairs.
the pandemic, so that when I'm printing off,
clever.
just doing that kind of thing, putting all of my favorite mugs on the top shelf So I have to reach to get things on the top shelf instead of having them at convenient. You know, I try to inconvenience my daily routine, and at the same time also removing all of the stuff that I knew that I just can't have. And I think there are a lot of people in denial who are sugar addicts who don't really realise that, well, firstly, they don't really realise how colossally dangerous sugar is inextensive.
But there is a culture
surplus.
of everything in moderation, right? So, and that's how they consume sugar. And sugar is addictive, so they keep consuming sugar.
Yeah.
Because they were told the carbs, bad carbs, simple carbs, and sugar, it's in moderation. But we never do moderation in sugar.
No.
We never take a tiny bit of chocolate and eat the whole bar.
Yeah,
right?
it's, you know, I think you have to learn your own biology. That is most people don't listen to their body. It's astonishing the number of people I meet who don't weigh themselves. So they have no idea what weight they are. And they have no idea what's happening when they do certain things. You know, I've just been to New York. I put on 5 pounds. And now I'm adjusting my routine.
What happened
To lose 5 pounds. And it's just the portion sizes, the food at a hotel, the cooked breakfast, the huge cooked breakfast, the going outs, the meeting, the lunch meetings, when you're outside of your routine, stuff happens. You have to then step back in, regain, get back onto the normal habits that you've embedded and rectify that problem. Otherwise, it's another pound, and then it's another pound, and then it's another pound. And if you don't know what you weigh, you're really in the dark in terms of how your behaviour is impacting your weight.